Members, welcome. We are so excited to have you with us today. And I know there's been about 200 of you that have expressed interest. So we know that there will be more that we will be letting in as we go. A couple of reminders before we get started, though. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah, and I'm your National Lifestyle Director, or you may be seeing me on some of our MTL monthlies that we host every month for you here in Arizona. And then a couple of things, again, is in my housekeeping. We're going to remind you that this is a recorded session so that if a neighbor happens to have missed it, or if you would like to rewatch it, we will be posting it on MTL for you later next week. And then a reminder too, as we go through today's program, you may have questions for Dr. Landry. All you need to do is go in there on the chat feature. You can type in your question, and Dr. Landry's team on the other side of the cameras here will be able to hang on to those and then ask Roger once the presentation is over. And so thank you to Dr. Rogers' team that is there helping us with all of this, because technology is marvelous, but we can only do so much as we sit in front of our cameras. So as we get started today, everybody knows by looking at your calendar that today Roger's going to be discussing social connection and how important it is to us. But I wanted to take a quick reminder for everybody and just kind of review the pillars of wellness that we have already covered this year. And many of you say, you know, how did you develop your pillars of wellness? And a lot of it has to do with this is really the basis of all of the programming that we do in our communities. So as we started out the beginning of the year, we were talking about physical fitness in the month of March, where it was Motion Month, where we really encourage you to kind of get out there and test your abilities and make sure that you're getting some fresh air every single day if you possibly can. In May, we rolled right into emotional confidence, which we all know how important that is. In July, Roger and I chatted about intellectual enrichment and how important it is to keep that brain at its optimum performance by learning something new or reading something different or just exploring a topic that maybe you've never done before. Then in September, we went into spiritual well-being. And of all of the topics that we've covered so far, that was probably the most impactful for me personally. So it was a really, really intriguing program, and I hope the rest of you enjoyed it as well. But today we're going to be talking about social connection. And so, Roger, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know the presentation is going to go about 30, 40 minutes, and then toward the end, we'll do any of the Q&A that come up. And then we're also going to give a little preview into what's coming up for next year. So I'm going to go off camera, and Roger, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, okay. Well, thank you, Sarah, as always. I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm really looking forward to next year because, well, you'll hear there's going to be at least one session where I'll actually be with you in the flesh. And I am so looking forward to that. This works, and this time you may notice my background's different behind here, so I'm not down in my basement, and I don't have pajama bottoms on. I am up in northern Arizona in a library because I was on the road, and so that's why it's a little different. But I very much appreciate the ability to do this with you, and that you've gathered together, I know, in groups to hear this, and those who will be looking at the recording. Again, I'm thrilled to be able to speak to you all year. This has been a great journey for me, and I hope for you. And it has caused me to look more deeply into some of the areas, the pillars of health. And I'm always anxious to do that and look at the latest research, and so I can share that with you. Today's topic, social connection, it's sort of intuitive, and everyone knows that this is important. And you're living where you're living, I know, many of you, for that reason. That yes, you didn't, you decided that you wanted to be in a community where you were going to meet new people and be active and do all the things we're talking about. And one of those things was that you stay socially connected. Because it is the core of who we are. The Maasai, the tribe in Africa, has a saying. They say, we are not human unless we are with other humans. And that's intriguing, but it's actually true because we humans are a special species because of the brain, the brain function that we have that is over and above all others. And so we know who we are with animals and we know who we are with nature, but with another human, that's a special relationship. And it's one that actually goes back very far. You have heard me say that our species were hunter gatherers and we have been for 99% of the time we have walked the earth. Again, that's hard to wrap your head around, but all that we've experienced is only just a minute or two in the total existence of our species. And so during that time when we were hunter gatherers, the world was a tough neighborhood. And had we not banded together, and with significant social connection, we wouldn't have survived, and we wouldn't be talking here today. We wouldn't be enjoying the life that we enjoy today. And so it is at the very core of who we are as humans. And so even when we went to this picture really shows when we became agrarian, and that was about 10,000 years ago. And all that did is drive us, more of us closer together. Whereas with hunter-gatherer tribes, it's, maybe 10, 30 people, maybe 30, 40, something like that. With agrarian societies, we could come together into small towns and cities. But still, it was that social connection that was critically important for us to survive. And it is at the very core of who we are. Think about it. If someone, say, committed an offense or for some reason wanted to go off all alone, it was unlikely that they were going to survive. It was unlikely they were going to meet a mate where they could continue their DNA. So that the DNA of those loners, or the DNA, that never got passed down. And so we are all the benefactors of the DNA of those who realize the benefit of connection with others and being with others. And so it is in our very, very DNA. Now, we have seen this before, that it is, this is a graph of the life, unfortunately, that most people still live today where they're born. They're at their very best for maybe a decade or two, hopefully 3, and then things begin to happen and there is a decline, which because of our technology is usually a long decline that is, and a longevity that it's not guaranteed that this longevity that we experience is going to be high quality. And we want to take the road of the dotted line here to being at high function for as long as possible, and then have the end be relatively short. That's called compression of morbidity. Morbidity being when we're sick and impaired. We want to compress that time. That the book I wrote, you've heard about, Live Long, Die Short, that's what this is addressing. We want to live long. We want to have a healthy longevity. And a critical, how that happens, it's all about lifestyle. It's all about the pillars that we've been talking about. And the social connection is a critical component of that. I will go into the research about what happens when people are not socially connected, but it is not this dotted line. It is more the solid line with the long decline and higher risk for all the major chronic diseases, dementia, cardiac disease, cancer, all of it when we are not connected. So again, this is not just something that's fun, and it is. It is not something that allows us to have a higher quality of life. It is. It is something at our very core that to enjoy a healthy longevity is necessary. We'll talk about it, that life happens, people can be annoying, and we might think that, I prefer to be alone. Well, I know you may prefer because of your defense mechanisms or because of things that happen, but in the end, that is not the way that we enjoy a healthy longevity or a higher quality of life. It is paying attention to lifestyle and social connection and the other pillars being a major part of that. So I have told you before about these blue zones. Now, these blue zones, which are coming up here, there's 5 original ones. These are people where Dan Buettner, an author for National Geographic and a researcher, found that people live to be very old, but not only old, but vital, dynamic. into their 80s, 90s, and over 100 in many places. And so he researched what was it? What were the characteristics of the people who lived in these areas? And we have talked about it before because we want to be living a lifestyle that's similar to that because that's what we need for a healthy longevity. And they're here. We've talked about movement in the physical part, how it's important to move. And if we don't, nothing really works well, our brain or cardiovascular system or anything. We've talked about a slower pace, and that was mostly in the spiritual side and the emotional side, and how we control the frenzied pace of our society and how we find peace and being able to be present. We've talked about diet, where most of the time we've been on Earth, we ate basically a Mediterranean diet: fruits, nuts, vegetables, wild grains, and small amounts of meat. And we talked about the role, the purpose we had in life, how critically important. We've talked about that this year, to have a reason to get out of bed. And the fact that being close to nature, once again, the spiritual part and finding meaning and purpose. And we talked about the fact that elders in these blue zones were considered, and are still considered, cultural treasures. Cultural treasures. Unfortunately, in the last few hundred years, that we've decided we marginalize older adults because they couldn't be as productive once the Industrial Revolution hit, and that has been a tragedy. And we're blue, we're all of us together who work in the area of wellness are trying to turn that around, and I believe it will. I believe it will turn around, and it is turning around. But there's been a lot of casualties of that marginalization, that idea that once you reach a certain age, you're off on the outside of society and you can just go play and you have no role in society. In blue zones, these people are cultural treasures, and they are committed to giving back, and the society is committed to craving and making it easy for them to share their wisdom. All critical. But the strong social support that they find in the blue zones is something that is quite remarkable. It involves all ages. It is intergenerational, very important. That it's not just older adults mixing together. It's very important because that's the way it was with our tribes and our small towns, where all ages interacted, worked together for the greater good and for everyone to survive. And this strong social connection that we see in this is quite remarkable. Dan Buettner has spent a lot of time in these blue zones, and continues to be impressed with how open these societies are to all ages, but particularly to older adults. So. I want to tell you a story. And in fact, this man was born on a Greek island very close to one of the blue zones. He, Stamatis Moraitis, you may have heard me speak about him in an earlier time, but he was a Greek freedom fighter in World War II, and he was wounded badly and sent to the United States to heal. And after he had healed, he was allowed to stay. The war was over, and he did. He married, had a career, had a wonderful life. And when he was in his late 60s, he was diagnosed with lung cancer and told that he probably had about a year to live. Well, he thought about that, and he says, I don't have much money, and funerals are cheaper in Greece, so he went back to Greece. He went to his village, he got into bed and pulled the sheets over and waited to die. And when that didn't happen, like a good Greek man, he went down to the taverna. And there in the taverna were all of his friends from childhood, all grown up, so happy to see him. They had a rousing time, and they continued to do that regularly. And he started feeling pretty well, so he planted a vineyard for grapes, and he worked in his friend's olive grove. And he recently passed. I think he was 106, but there he is, 102 in this picture, way beyond the time of his projected death. And they asked him, what was it? And he says, well, it's the wine. I drink it with my friends. And that last part in particular is the power of it. And we have seen this time and time again. When someone is connected, good things happen. When they are not connected, we now can calculate that it's the equivalent of the risk of smoking a half pack of cigarettes a day for your life. And we know that that's not a good thing. So being not connected to others is a high risk for a less than healthy longevity. So once again, you see the phrase from the Maasai, but in our previous presentations, particularly in the emotional confidence one and the spiritual one, we have touched on things that are very much related to our social connection. And I will be speaking about some of that. But the fact is that these things are all meshed together. All these pillars, not just one or two. It takes a holistic lifestyle in order to achieve a healthy longevity or have the likelihood to, and to the likelihood of avoiding that long, expensive, lower quality of life decline that is possible and still more common. So once again, the risk of loneliness we have particularly seen during this pandemic. We have seen people in senior living who virtually became prisoners because of the risk to them, and we've seen them decline physically, mentally, their cognitive function decline, and this we knew that this was happening, but the pandemic put a spotlight on it. And it made me think of a friend of mine, and I've told you this story before, but it's so impactful that I have to tell you again. My friend Tom was a pilot in Vietnam, and he was shot down, and he was captured, and he was a prisoner for 7.5 years. During a good part of that, he was in solitary confinement, and for most of the time, he was tortured regularly. And he told me that when they came to get him in solitary to bring him to be tortured, secretly he was a bit happy because they came in and another human touched him. He saw others along the way who were pretty friendly, as they had no investment to try to get information out of him. He said the torture was not fun. Of course it wasn't, but it was less pain than the pain of being in solitary confinement. We are herd animals. We are social animals. And it is a form of torture just to put someone in solitary. And in fact, we have pretty much stopped doing that in our prison system now, in our penal system, because it is inhumane to do that. And yet, in our society, even without the pandemic, but the pandemic once again made it very clear that this is a big problem. We saw people who were, one reason or another, that loneliness has always been going on, and it accelerates the decline that we think is inevitable with age, but we know because of this year and why you are where you are and why I do what I do and why Sarah does what she does, that this does not have to be the case and should not be the case. In fact, the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland and Canada all have recent positions in the government, ministers of loneliness, because they recognize the seriousness of this problem and how it results in higher health costs, lower quality of life, and therefore they know that by doing this and putting a spotlight on this problem of loneliness later in life, they hope to reverse it, and as we do. And so, many of us sometimes we go through life and everybody goes away, all the kids go away, grandkids come, and then they have their own lives, and we don't see them as much as we did. And then perhaps even if the spouse doesn't die, but particularly if the spouse does die, that this can be a very lonely existence. We have friends they move to Arizona, they move to California, but they can move away, they can die, and many of the associations that we had before go away, like that were associated with our kids' life. And so a huge problem and a self-induced isolation is just that. It is self-destructive. And we sometimes don't realize just how much it is and how much better we can all be if we can stay connected. We see this in the animal kingdom. We see it, certainly we see it in the relationship of humans with dogs. That is a very special relationship. It relates to the same part of the brain which we share with other mammals, the limbic system, the mammalian brain, it's called. And you have heard me talk about that with in the emotional confidence part and even in the spiritual part. And so animals do have a sense, and depending upon their species, are drawn to social groups. So dogs, of course, come from wolves who run in packs. But when they were with humans, we become their pack. And they interact just like that. And any of you have had a dog know that that is a very special relationship. But it's there with other herds. It certainly is in primates. We see it very strongly in primates, apes and bonobo apes and chimpanzees. We see it very much in let's say horses. We see it in felines, cats, where they travel in groups, and very much like our ancestors did for survival. And so this is not something that's just seen in humans, but it is with humans that it becomes so very critical for our survival and for our healthy longevity. So I acknowledge, and I'm a big one, I enjoy my alone time. The world goes at such a frenzied pace, and there's so much noise and movement and everything crowded into a moment, and the incentive to produce more and more, to do more and more, and to keep going and get things done and have a to-do list, that I treasure my time alone, as you do. And we need that. We need that time. Our brains need it to recover. Our bodies need it to recover. But that does not deny the fact that we are better together. There is absolutely no question about it. We thrive. We have a higher quality of life. We become better than we are or would be when we're alone. Now, there are some threats to that. It's ironic, I think, that technology that was designed to connect people, and does, but connect in a different way, has become, we see, a barrier to the sort of significant social connection that we crave. What we crave comes from our ancestors, the hunter-gatherers, the agrarian cultures, and that is still what we crave and need for a healthy longevity. Now, if we were all isolated, as many of us were in COVID, technology was a wonderful way to overcome the fact that we weren't connecting with others. But I think we all see, and we're all concerned about the young people in our country, and not just all young. I see it in people our age and peers, where technology becomes an obsession, where it draws us away from, first of all, being present in the world, and that has to do with spirituality and purpose and quality of life, but from others also. As this picture denotes, they're there together, that's good. They're close enough, they're actually even touching, and that's good, but they're not engaged with each other. And we're concerned that technology, if not used correctly, can be and is becoming a distraction to the kind of social connection and intercourse that we really need. This picture, I think, shows it, where the three are being human and thriving, and the other one, and this is totally socially acceptable in our young people. And I have to say, I've seen it in older adults also, where this kind of thing. Think about it when you were young. This would have, if someone got on the phone or was watching TV, this would have been unacceptable. But we're looking at a generation now of young people whose whole life technology has been there. And they know how to use it. They're fantastic. We can learn from them. And it's good that they're using the technology to do marvelous things. But again, technology, as many things, there's a dark side to it. And to the extent that it interferes with the kind of social connection that we benefit most from, face to face, touching, as you've heard, a good 65% of communication is nonverbal. And so if you're not in someone's presence, you can still get some, say on this video, I did that, you would get some idea of what I was feeling, but not as much as if we're sitting together. So in February, I want to be sharing some more interaction and more communication with you down there. A great book written by an MIT professor, and it's Alone Together, and it talks just about this. how ironically with technology that brings us together, it is making people grow apart. And the research is very clear and very disturbing how that younger generations, 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, are more unhappy than they were in previous years before things like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all of these things. And I think if we have used it, or if we see it being used in younger people, we can see why. Because you can get someone sending you a snapshot of their life at one moment, which is all rainbows and unicorns and all beautiful. And you say, well, my life's not like that. Well, of course, it's not at this moment, maybe, but you've had those rainbows and unicorn moments too. But it gives the feeling that of people that they're inadequate, and therefore there's a lot of unhappiness. So technology isn't going away. We are and should continue to use it positively, but let us not think that it is all good. That there are, if not used correctly, if not used with some sort of present, some sort of understanding of what we need as humans, that indeed can be detrimental. I shared this quote before, and I love it. It's my friend John Spooner, and it's absolutely true. Better to eat fries with friends than broccoli alone. It's like stomatitis miritis, drinking wine with my friends. This is who we are. And I think that if you go back through your life and say, what are the high points of my life? What are the most memorable, high quality moments in my life? And if you think about that, I would wager that the majority, by far, were with other people. Could be family members, could be friends, but it almost always is with others. I myself have been at the deathbed of many, many people, and I never hear that I wish I had done more, I wish I had made more money, I wish I had been more famous. It was always about other people and relationships and love. That is the barometer we tend to all gravitate to in those last moments of our life, because it's who we are. We're humans. And to live a life where you're either ignore that or not realize that indeed it is part of who we are, that's going off the rails, so to speak, of what it is to be human and what it takes to have a healthy longevity. Now, there's some other things that can get in the way. And we've talked about this. We talked about this in emotional confidence, that mindsets, which are, as you see, these are habitual and ways that we tend to react to things, and they are based upon sometimes things we don't even remember. Why do I feel this way about this group? Or why do I feel this way about a certain situation? Or why do I have this feeling that I cannot do something? Where did that come from? And frequently, if indeed you do sit down, think about it, it may have been something someone told you, like parents or teachers, or it could have been one incident out of the thousands that you've had in your life that made you begin to think in this way, in a way that you were set. This is how you were going to respond. I think you can easily see that that kind of mindset can be a barrier to social connection for a large group of people who may fit into a category that you find is not the best, or how, for one reason or another, despite data, science, other experiences, we block them out sometimes because it doesn't agree with our mindset. And we're seeing a lot of that today. So that's what's happening. So we talk about people having a fixed or a growth mindset. Now, usually one dominates in a person, but we can have both. Like on one issue, we may have a growth mindset, whereas in others it's fixed. But this is what we're talking about. You can imagine fixed mindset is closed off. It is closed off to interaction, other ideas, even being with other people and how we view other people. And therefore, that kind of mentality is a huge barrier to social connection. Someone else on the street, you may talk to some people, but other people you'll cross the street. And what is the reason for that? We should ask ourselves, What is that really about? And where does it come from? Is it correct? And so we have to be very careful about this. And we all have a mindset, but a growth mindset, one that is open, one that wants to learn, one that will listen to others' views or opinions. You don't have to agree with them, but to at least listen. And that's the sort of mindset that expands the possibilities of social interaction. This quote, I love this quote. It's an African proverb, and I think it's extremely true. So going as a group is the way for a long and high quality lifespan. Going it alone, you may be able to get some ribbons and some status, but quite frequently when you pop through with all the medals and all the status, you're alone. And we all know if some celebrities are revered, and yet no one is truly a friend that you could call at 2 a.m. to get help. Let me go back there. We also talked about emotional intelligence in the emotional confidence one, and I bring it here because again, this is an important part of the quality of our social connection and our interaction with others. And so this is the capacity to be able to view your emotions. Remember, emotions are automatic things that happen when we're presented with a thought or a condition, and the emotion immediately happens and the emotion drives an action. Now, if that thought comes from something in your head, like a mindset or a misinterpretation of something, that emotion is still going to happen and it's going to drive probably an inappropriate reaction. When you've had instances where you've, quotes, lost your temper and said and did things that were destructive that you honestly didn't mean, but at the moment you were out of control, so to speak, because emotions do take over. Like when we were presented with the view of a lion, we had fear, and our fight and flight mechanism would cut in, and we were drawn to run or to fight. That was all automatic, and it was very quick. But we humans have a higher level brain, and if we do it, we can recognize, look at me, I'm getting angry, I'm going to lose my temper, I better step back, take a breath. We can control that. It can be automatic, but those with emotional intelligence can step back, and it won't be automatic if it's not appropriate. So being in touch with your thoughts, your emotions, what is happening in my body right now? What am I thinking right now? Stopping during the day at any particular time, or when a particular thing is upsetting you, say, or in other ways impactful to you, say, okay, why am I thinking? What am I thinking now? What am I feeling now? And that alone takes away the automatic nature of this, and now you're judging the best way to act, which is the way you do most of the time when there isn't a very strong emotional response to what's happening. So emotional intelligence is another, and these are the aspects. Oh, I think I have another slide. Yes, these are the things, the idea of being able to be self-aware, what is happening, to be motivated, to be connected to others in a positive way, to have empathy, so that when someone else has experienced something, that you just don't go off on your own and narcissistic and not even be aware. In fact, we have in our brains something called mirror, like looking in the mirror, neurons. And we know now with brain scans that when one person is feeling something, usually sadness or something like that, strong emotion, and we look at their brain scan, we see which aspect of the brain, which part of the brain is firing. And we look at someone else who's viewing them, who's with them, and we find often that part of their brain is also firing. Mirror neurons. This actually happens, we know, between animals and humans to some extent. Dogs in particular, we've seen that to some extent. It's quite remarkable to see. Social skills, of course. We say, a fixed mindset would say, I have social skills or I don't. Well, come on. We can all get better at social skills. If it's just, and I'm going to give you a few ways to do that right after this, and how you can become a social connective rock star. And it's about self-regulation, realizing that you're about to become out of control, do something that can hurt others, either truly physically or emotionally or mentally, and not let that happen. So how do we become then a social connection rock star? Okay, you have seen some of these recommendations before, particularly with emotional confidence, but again, that is tied very closely to all of this. To quiet our chattering mind, that is more about being present. That is about being able to step back from the this emotional thing that, or these wild thoughts that are running in your head, and really look at where you are. Be present. Be present. Being present with others also when you're with them, rather than thinking about what you're going to say next or your to-do list, and you're looking at them and pretending you're listening, but you're not really present with them. That is not something that leads to significant social connection. Being grateful for the way life is right now, that is something that is that leads us to be very positive. When we're positive, first of all, we live longer, 7.5 years longer, by the way, if you have full people versus the half empty. And it's also it's about an approach that looks for the positive in events and in other people. And that is the way that I think we're drawn to people, rather than thinking, just focusing on maybe the things that we don't agree with. Compassion, compassion, compassion. We're all in this together. We're all humans. We're all species. We all are trying to get through the night. We're all trying to do our best. Sometimes we're annoying to others and they're annoying to us. It's tough, but that's the least we can do, is to have compassion. The Dalai Lama says, if you want to be happy, have compassion. If you want others to be happy, have compassion. And I think he would add, if you want to be socially connected to others, have compassion. Forgive. Forgiveness does more for the forgiver than the person forgiven, because to carry around the vitriol, the anger, the stress of being angry with someone and never forgiving them, that is more detrimental to you probably than to them. And Nelson Mandela is my hero to this day, even though he's passed, being imprisoned for 27 years, being released, and within a few years being the president of South Africa, and not using that power to have revenge and to get back at those who treated him so badly, because he wanted the greater good. He wanted the country to come together, and therefore he forgave them. And this one you've seen before. Give up the need to be right. This probably today in our society is it's probably the hardest thing to do, but it was probably the most powerful things that could change the direction of our society. It was funny. I did this, and in fact, I think it was with one of our questions where a woman asked, "Well, what if you are right?" Yes, and it's true. That helps me to refine this further. It's about not necessarily just being right. It's about making the other person wrong and making them feel that they're wrong and admit they're wrong. Bullying, beating them with your words. Now, truly, think about it. In your entire life, when you've had an argument with someone, have you ever convinced someone that your position is right and theirs is wrong? Particularly over things that are hot, like religion and politics and other things. And very few have ever. Most people, I don't get any hands up. And so it's kind of a needless exercise, and one that gets in the way of positive social reaction. So that's it. That's who we are. We are a species. We're meant to be together. We're better together. And when we can do something, and I've seen this at the end of life, if someone can feel this, that they've done this, they pass quietly, they pass peacefully, they pass as if their life has really meant something. And that's about being socially connected to others. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know that Sarah gave a quick review. I just want to give a very quick one. This has been a great journey. I have enjoyed you being with me. Sorry that I still haven't been able to meet some of you, but that we're going to correct that a little bit next year. Sarah will be talking about next year. And I think it's been a journey through your pillars and your pillars of wellness. And these are solid. And we have to pay attention to all of them if indeed we're going to experience that healthy longevity. So in the road ahead, I think if we're going to achieve a healthy longevity, we have to pay attention to these pillars. The physical part, being sedentary has a risk associated, like with a pack of cigarettes. It makes everything work better and longer. And we can indeed continue to move. It's just about movement. It's not about running marathons. We have emotional confidence has to do with the emotional IQ. We talked about the emotional intelligence. It has to do with mindset and how we interact with each other, and certainly about our emotions and our compassion and our empathy. Intellectually, our brains will respond if we continue to learn. They will grow new pathways. It'll make a decline in our cognitive function very much less likely to happen to the extent we continue to move to get blood to our brains and continue to learn new things, small or large. Spiritual. I agree. I think the most moving talk that I gave this year to all of you was this one, because I dove into this very deeply, and you'll see Sarah from our group with us, and she has been a guide for me as another one. Danielle has been, and it has. I think that even at my later stage in life here, I began to bloom and understand what this was all about. But being present for your life. Life is a series of moments. And if we miss those moments, we miss our life. If we miss those moments because we're wrapped up in our thoughts, our to-do list, we're here, we're there, or we're angry, we're just focused on something and not being present, at least for even just minutes a day, we miss our lives. So wherever you are, be there, especially when you're with others for today's presentation. And remember Kaizen, this is about making change in very small steps to make it achievable and make it change durable. So if you want a big goal, break it into very small steps and make those little steps your goal. So there we are for today. And I can't tell you what a tremendous and rewarding experience this has been. And I very much look forward to next year. So Sarah, you got it.
Sounds great. And to our members that are listening in today, the thing that makes it really confusing is that I'm a Sarah and Roger has a Sarah. So yes. We get very confused sometimes on which one of us he's chatting with. So the one in the spiritual well-being camp works with Roger and the team at Masterpiece. And again, I agree with you. That was probably one of the most impactful sessions that I participated in this year. Of course, I love them all because I think we constantly need reminders to keep ourselves in check. And as you were showing the one today with the kids on their phone, I thought, oh, you've nailed my 15-year-old niece right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's her life. But again, members, just thanks so much for participating today with us. And I know we have a couple of questions coming in, but I want to give a sneak preview into what Roger and the folks in his company and Blue Star have planned for you for next year. I know that there's a long-awaited anticipation of when the new MTL calendar will come out, so you can see when those dates are. So those will be distributed into your clubs in the middle of December. And again, that's just a recap of all the different kinds of programming, both national and local things that you'll be able to do in your particular community. And the great news here also is that we've got a couple of new communities that are coming on board this year. So if any of our members are out there from Trilogy Valor up in Boise, I know you don't even have a club yet, but there's a lot of you being active, so we appreciate that. So you'll be able to participate too. But in January, Roger and I will be back, and we will be talking to you just about New Year, New You. And we talk sometimes about New Year's resolutions. Well, I don't think any of us believe that that's the right way to go. But what we do know is we need to be kind of predictors for what our future is going to look like. So Roger and I will chat with you about that. More to come. Then in February, we have the pleasure of Roger likes to seem to come to Arizona in the month of February to spend time with friends. And so we grabbed him for an in-person presentation at the Kiva Mita Club out in Peoria, Arizona. So Trilogy Vistancia. We'll be hosting Roger live, and many of us from Arizona will be traveling out to Vistancia to see that presentation. So that'll be on February the 11th. And then we're going to start something different toward middle to the end of the year, because we're going to go through a 4-session program very similar to this, but we're really going to focus in on resilience. Because again, I think as Roger has shown us this year, how important it is, and how we handle different situations is very important. And Roger, I wrote down one of my main thoughts for myself is mindset, because I got a lot of people that got under my skin last week, and I probably didn't handle it the best that I could have. So I've got to go back and reframe a little bit of that for myself. But that is what we're going to be bringing to you next year, along with Roger continuing to write some articles for us that we publish for our members every month. So we have that. And then and again, Sarah, I'm not sure if we have questions on your side, but I just wanted to give a shout out. And I know not all of our members are on today, but we had a phenomenal and are still continuing to promote our Gate to Gate, which is, we do this every single year in November, Roger, and it's part of our social connection pillar about having our members get out and walk and socialize and meet new neighbors. And again, part of the physical fitness of what we are preaching all the time in our pillars. But this year we took a little bit of a twist. We took the competition out of it just a little bit and asked that everybody this year that participated to help us do some fundraising for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. And we know that probably out in our communities, some family has been touched by the great value of what they do. But I just wanted to give a shout out, and I wanted it to be on the recording, that so far, members, you've raised over $37,000 for St. Jude's. So phenomenal job. So thank you very, very much for that. And we still have until the end of the month. If anybody else still wants to sign up, please feel free to go ahead. But thank you so much for your passion and your philanthropy through Gate to Gate this year. We really, really appreciate it.
Bravo.
I know, it's great. I love it. Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you. Roger, a question for you. Without saying this in a sexist way, I think there's a tendency for females to engage more socially than males. I saw a lot of this when I worked in senior living. And I'm curious if you have any insight around that, or any ideas, or, maybe the males on the call and the females with husbands on the call who have experienced this. I know I see it in my own family, but just any thoughts around that, or ways that we can encourage them?
Yes. Well, first of all, the observation is correct, very correct. And I have, for many, many decades now, felt that, the fact that we know that women live longer than men. And of course, some of that was sometimes that men were exposed to things like war, just men for a while, primarily, and or occupations that were very affect their health, which lowered the average. But now we're seeing less of a difference between that now, and but we still see a gap. It was closing a bit, but we still see a gap. And I believe that a lot of that has to do with the fact that women are able to share, to connect with others, to go through tough times together. We're a society that has sort of worshipped the Steve McQueen's, or the lonely cowboy riding off into the sunset all alone, and leaving the woman that he was loving behind because he had to go do his thing or whatever, and he was or the people behind. And so we revered this independence of men. I know my father quite, and with all the right intention, raised us, 2 boys, no girls, to be very independent from age 16, and that can be a problem. Ask my wife of 53 years, but so I do believe the observation is correct. And now, what can we do about it? I think that as we see that in our society, that the role of men has significantly, well, it's changed, but what men considered their role in society has gone away. Everything that men used to do when we were young, only men did primarily, are now is done by both. And that's, of course, that's the way it should be. But that can make men be in thinking about, well, what am I? What's my role? When am I a man? Should I get a truck and a gun and drink a lot and do, risky behavior? That's what we're seeing, actually, with opiates and many. And so I think something, but I'm very happy to say that I'm also observing younger men now, much, and I see it in my grandkids, with a different relationship with women as a group, as a society, and sharing many things together as a group. And I think that they're becoming much more emotionally aware and spiritually present, and an appreciation it. So my advice would be, go back and look at these recordings, and you will see, although maybe I have not said men do this, this is how we achieve a healthy longevity. And women are nodding, saying, yeah, I do that. And men are saying, say what? And so on those say what moments, what can I do to in order to not so much be a woman, they won't want to hear that, but to be a full human, and to be able to become a man in every sense of the word in a modern society.
Yeah, as you said that, Roger, I was just imagining the words, just nurture themselves and care for themselves. And it is, you're so right about how things have changed from that sort of touchy, women are more touchy-feely, talk about emotions, that sort of thing. But that is changing, because obviously men have all those same emotions and feelings as well. So I do see that shift certainly happening in, I have a 12-year-old son, and
if I may say,
raising
Sarah,
him. Yeah.
If I may say, I don't want to interrupt, but sometimes disdainfully and very poorly stated, men can say, well, women are emotional. Well, we're all emotional, and women, by sharing those emotions, stay a whole lot healthier than men. Again, we're not saying men act like women. We're saying men act like humans, and that's what we want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. All right. Well, we don't have any other questions at this time, but if anyone would like to add any to the chat, feel free to. We've got just a few more minutes.
Sarah, you're with a group, a unique group, Sarah with a C. You're with a unique group that focuses on end of life. Have you seen anything with any of the pillars that we've done this year, but particularly with social connection, that has come up with that group that you might want to share?
Well, I can tell you that looking at mortality and impermanence is a whole heck of a lot easier when you do it with other people who are also doing it as well. So tackling that topic, which is such another kind of like aging is sort of a taboo topic that we just sort of push aside. Death and dying is certainly that way as well. But what we do is we get cohorts together, not people who are necessarily been given a terminal end date or anything like that, but just anyone who's interested in, not pushing the fact that they'll die away. In fact, the statistics in the US in over 18 adults is that 1 in 8 people actually think they're immortal, which is crazy and mind-blowing just to hear that. I tell people that statistic and they're like, what? So it's just helping people like that, and the social support of looking at that. Then when it happens in one group, we just had 2 people lose their mom in the last 2 weeks, but they have all of us, and we're all there for them. So the gratitude that's flowing from the people who've lost people is just amazing, because they're handling it so much differently because they have support. Go ahead, Roger.
No, well, that's it. I mean, relative to any strong emotion, loss, or anything, it is. A lot of people have to be alone, but they also have to be with people. There was the author of Sophie's Choice. I've forgotten her name. His name. He says, I always knew that we were mortal, but I thought they'd make an exception in my case.
That's it.
Let me
Yeah.
share something also. There's an author who's around my neck of the woods, Sebastian Junger, and he wrote The Perfect Storm and other books. Tribe is the latest, and but he's a combat journalist, and relative to the bonding that goes within combat within the groups. They will tell you that they do the things they do, which are heroic, go through such horrendous events, and many sometimes experiencing PTSD. But PTSD is less when something is experienced and shared together. And they do what they do, these soldiers, because they don't want to let anyone in their group down. It is the social bonding that makes them do almost superhuman things. In fact, many of them come back to the States during Afghanistan, and they would be here a while and very quickly would sign up again to go over to Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And we wondered why, and he asked them, and it was because I didn't feel bonded to others. They didn't understand what I had been through. They hadn't been through with me, and they seemed so petty and superficial in what they worried about. And I have to go back where I'm bonded with someone for a very strong purpose. So it's quite significant.
That makes a lot of sense. There's a researcher that I really enjoy her work. Her name is Kelly McGonigal, and she studies social support in the frame of movement. So it's, the exercise class that you're going to as a group, and you're there and you're moving together. And all of her research shows that just is so amazing, like increased pheromones while you're exercising, and the benefits of exercise are even higher if you're doing it with a group of people, and especially if you're moving together. So you think about, all those tribal dances and in Africa and across the country from the past, really solidified that group and their connection with each other. So you can still find that in your exercise class.
It goes to the core. Once again, have you ever been stuck in an elevator with someone? All strangers when you get on that elevator. And if you're stuck on the elevator or a natural disaster or some sort of event, you see something happen that normally wouldn't happen if that event hadn't caused it for you to interact with each other. We crave it. We absolutely crave it. We don't like everybody. People annoy us, as I said before, but we absolutely crave being with others. And we can't deny it. We can pretend that it's not that, but in the end, we're better together.
Absolutely. What a great way to end off, Roger and Sarah. We're all better together, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, as we wrap up today, Trilogy members, thank you so much for joining us. I know that Roger and his team and I have all enjoyed our experiences together for 2022. As we come into November and December, we know it's a busy travel season, so take care of yourself, be mindful and be respectful of others. Try not to start any arguments in an airplane line. That'd be great if you cannot. And again, I'm going to kind of take away that whole mindset idea. So thank you. Safe travels. Roger, we'll see you in person in February. Safe travels back to your destination. And thanks again, members. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Sarah.
Oh,
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.